Hey everybody, this is So Many Sequels. I'm Josh.
I'm Garrett. And I'm David.
Welcome to the show. It is our fourth week of So Many Scares. Is it four?
That's right. That's right.
It's the fourth week of So Many Scares. We're all very scared now. We've
Yes.
had like nice family friendly starts and we had some scares along the way. But this week we're talking about the Crazies, which was David's pick. I feel like this is more of a lesser known movie, honestly. I don't remember it being a big thing.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It doesn't have any massive stars. It has a few people who have grown more famous since then. I feel like it kind of flew under the radar. So I'm curious, why, David, did you pick the Crazies? I mean, I have an obvious reason for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The most obvious reason being that it stars Timothy Olyphant, and I absolutely love Timothy Olyphant and everything he's ever been in, with the exception of Santa Clarita Diet, which he's not bad in. It's not a bad show. I just couldn't handle it. I just
Just the
couldn't handle
blood?
it. He's all that blood.
Because I loved that show and I was so sad when it got canceled.
I know a lot of people did love that show. It's a fun show.
So
Look, that
fun.
Netflix thing was a 2-season Netflix show.
Yep.
But
Something like that.
it's just too much blood for me. I couldn't handle it. But he's great in everything. So one, that's one of the reasons. But two, and so because I'm a big fan of going all the way back to Scream 2, he is someone who's just everything he's done has always stood out in his whenever it comes out. And so the Crazies was this movie that I saw on FX before I had really like my fandom for him had started. And I only saw it in bits and pieces. It was on FX or something. And I saw like I came in the middle. So I didn't know a lot of the details about it. But since then, it's just always just kind of been, and I knew it didn't necessarily perform all that well. It wasn't like it didn't become this whole thing, but it was one of those things where I was like, I used to go to this website called spill.com, right? And I listened to a review they did of it. And they always talked about how it was kind of like a zombie movie that really tries to not be a zombie movie. And I was like, that seems like it'd be an interesting one for us to try to dissect for a horror film. We've done zombie movies in the past. We just did World War Z, which was this supposed to be this giant epic scale level zombie movie. Let's do something. I was like, let's do something that's a zombie movie that is not epic in scale, that is like the most small scale you can go, which is tiny town and whatever it is, Iowa. And so I want to give that a try. I wanted us to get in something that was kind of zombie-ish for the season because we'd handled witches, we'd handled serial killers, we'd handled demon curses. Might as well get a zombie flick in or infection movie, whatever you want to call this. So yeah, that's why I picked it. It's something a little different, something a little out there, and some just stars as somebody who I'm a big fan of.
Okay. Okay. Fair. These are good reasons, I think. Fair enough. I could never decide if I had seen it or not before. So I'm going to go with I didn't. And I'm pretty sure you didn't either, right, Garrett?
Sure.
So this was our first time. Well, what did you think about it? You like zombie movies. Zombie movies are good.
Yeah, I appreciated this pick, David. I liked it. I walked away enjoying this movie. I think that they started it really well and it got my intrigue with the guy coming out on the baseball field in the middle of the game with a gun. It built this tension because nobody knows what's going on. You have no idea what's happening. And this is so out of character seemingly for everything in this town. This is a very small town. And I think if you're going to have a horror movie like this, a small town where everybody knows one another and is familiar with one another adds to that. I liked the little spin on the zombie take where it was not necessarily they turn into zombies, but they turn into these unabashed killers for no reason. Sure, what's happening, but like vicious killers. And then I think the movie kind of turned into an escape movie and it pivoted away from some of the horror elements. And I think that was an overall mistake for the movie because I really thought it sung whenever it was building that tension and really giving you those moments of what are these people going to do? And then there were no more people. And it was just, how do we get out of this? And how do we save this? And I think that second half of the movie kind of took away from some of the front and took away some of the scary. But overall, I thought it was a really good pick.
Yeah, I thought it had really good tension, especially in the first half or so. It got a lot of horror elements right. And then I would agree with Garrett that it kind of shifts gears into more of a action style movie and they kind of lowered the scares a little bit, which wasn't a bad thing. I just kind of wish they had kept with the scariness of it because it had worked so well in the beginning. That scene where she goes into the tractor barn and I don't know what farm equipment is. So the thing with the hay bale thing.
Yeah.
For the video viewers, they'll know what I'm doing. They'll get it. That was legitimately scary to me because she's standing right in front of this freaking
Tall.
motorized rink. And I'm like, you're going to get run over. And it looked like a really horrible way to go. So why are you standing in front of it? And then, it just ratchets it up from there when there's nobody in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So the scares were great. Timothy Oliphant was great. I like him. The more I see of him, the more I understand your man crush for him. He is both funny and charming and handsome all into one.
Yeah.
He's a good lead in this. I don't know why he plays cops all the time, but
I don't either.
because he doesn't give a. I don't know.
Never your regular cop, though. He's always
He's
like
not.
a small,
Yeah,
edgy cop.
yeah.
Like, he doesn't necessarily have to follow the same rules as a regular cop in the stuff I've seen.
He plays conflicted cop really well. That's
Yeah, he does.
kind of like in a lot of the things he does, he's always like cop who's put in a situation he doesn't really want to be in, or he's like, maybe he's like in Deadwood, he's like forced to be cop because he doesn't, he used to be one, but he's moved on because he wants to move on with his life and do something different. But because the town is so lawless, they like push it on him like, hey, you used to be a cop, so we're just going to push it on you. And he burns him up. And he can't, and at the end of the day, he can't not do it. But yeah, he plays conflicted police officer, sheriff, marshal, whatever it is, pretty well.
He does. Now, there is an aspect of this movie I got to make fun of a little bit because it was a little, it was a little over the top.
Go ahead.
I know that I've never seen the original version of this movie that this is a remake of, but I understand that it had a lot of political messaging in it. And this one really hits you with the don't take away my small town. The government's trying to take us out. They'll never let us have our town. They really care about that town a lot.
Yeah.
And the government was gonna, they don't even care that they haven't been infected. They're just gonna kill us all.
Yeah, that was one piece.
So a little ham-fisted.
Yeah, that was one piece of the movie where it was like kind of a little weak as far as like the explanation. Like the plane, the plane that had this disease type thing that they were working on, this chemical, into this river in this small town, and that's essentially what's infecting everything, right? And then at some point in time, they confront the government agent, and he's like, "What do you want me to say, man? We lost a plane."
Yeah.
What? That was the worst line in the whole movie. And then he gets punched in the face, which was a valid response because that was
The messaging, I think, from 70 was I had it here from 73 to 2010. I think will always be the government is too big and incompetent to so like this just like pencil pusher, just like I'm just I do get it to an extent. I get it for him. He's just like I'm just some dude who they sent down here, man. Like he's like I don't know what to tell you, man. We already lost the plane. Like there's no put the plane back in the sky. We didn't crash it here on purpose. But yeah, I think to kind of go off with you guys, because I assume you guys are thinking like David loves this movie. This is like everything. And I know, well, that's not it.
nearly.
I did really like the movie, but I'm not going to pretend that it is without flaw because there is an element of, I think its best moments are when it's dealing with, the titular Crazies. And I think that is to quote Timothy Oliphant, that is a really cool title. That was like half the reason he accepted the movie because he really liked the title. It's a cool thing for them to refer to these infected people as, like that's what they become. They don't necessarily die and then reanimate. They just slowly subdue into like a homicidal rage, and then they can't control their inhibitions for the most part. Judy, the wife character, has the worst peripheral vision of any character in cinema, where not once but two times this woman goes and walks across the room and then stands there and there's somebody behind her that she could have seen. But I think that some places where this movie sort of slipped up, where they did a great job with bringing two characters back. So there's a scene where she goes into her baby's room and then there's a woman standing in the corner. Well, the woman's not just anybody. It's the wife and the son of the guy that Timothy Oliphant kills in the beginning of the movie with the gun on the baseball field. And that's really smart to bring, because it's a small town where everybody knows each other. Like you said, you're not having to fight and kill random nobodies that you never met before. These are people that you've known all your life and have history with and real emotional history. I think there was a wasted opportunity to do something with the mayor who was like, nah, I ain't shutting off the water. Like that guy never came back around in a way to get hilariously murdered by his own decisions. And maybe he was right. By that point, it was too late anyway. But yeah, the paranoia and the trying to get out, the government being kind of the real bad guy overall, like, they're the ones coming in and just saying this town it's done and there's not much, we don't have much use for it anyway, just nuke it, is it an extreme, it's not really even a metaphor. It's an extreme commentary. But yeah, I think if the movie had taken a little bit longer to get the army involved or whoever, maybe that could have given you a little bit more time. Because what I did love about the movie, like Garrett, like you said, is that it doesn't waste a ton of time like some movies do. There's a lot of movies that I talked about this, I think, off camera with you guys with Smile, where it just took a long time for it felt like the characters to figure out what was going on, where the audience, we bought in immediately. Like we buy in immediately for some of these types of things. And so the movie didn't waste a full hour explaining how this outbreak started. Like basically from the moment after, Vint on the baseball field, Timothy Oliphant, his name, what's his character? David, and his deputy, they're looking into like what's going on here. And, boom, somebody, a pair guy crashing a parachute. Boom. Okay, let's go out and look around. Did you say he's heard something? Right? And they go, there's a plane that we just found. What's in the plane? What's in the water? And they're figuring it out. And by, about 36 minutes into the movie, you have a pretty good idea what's going on as to the characters. And it's underway. Given recent events, the scene of going through a big a big room to be checked out, and everybody's getting their heads scanned to see if they have elevated temperature levels, and then sort of getting separated. That's sort of, I mean, I don't think we went through anything quite like that, but the idea of being told, no, you got to go over to this side. Sorry, but, and lastly, just, I want to say that I do really like the guy dragging the pitchfork. I think that.
Oh, yes. That is an exceptionally creepy scene and great camera work on that cinematography, I guess. I don't know. Andrew could comment on that. We don't have our cinematography guy, but I was going to say that I think it would have worked better if maybe they leaned more into the idea of losing their town in terms of its people and those people connections. Like you said earlier, oh my gosh, everyone knows everyone and they're watching them turn into madness. Instead, it seemed like it really turned into them being upset about losing physical things, the farm and the literal town. And I just kept thinking, that's not even logical. Like, your town is ground zero for a biological weapon. I don't care I don't want to live in that town anymore. And why would you? So it's weird to me. That part was weird to me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that was the moment that they just kind of made the wrong decision as far as like where to focus, because it was that tension that they build. Like, here's this person that we know, they're acting funny, and I think an example of where they could have done better in telling that story is the deputy character. Over time, as they're searching together, David and the deputy, great band name.
Ooh,
Yeah. And
write that down.
the deputy just starts being a dick, but is not really explained why. Like, you kind of gather that he is being infected, but everybody else that you went to, you never saw that same kind of transition. Like, they just weren't feeling well. They didn't slowly become an asshole. They just went
Yeah, like
crazy. And I
a lot
think
of
that
cases.
story was weirdly
Yeah.
told based on how the pandemic thing went. I think it just kind of fell flat, and it could have
Yeah.
been a tension builder.
I think it was sort of changing the rules slightly just for a different dramatic tension, because like you said, the first couple characters that we see start to experience it, they mostly go like quietly catatonic. Like they just like stare off into the distance. They don't seem to be paying attention. And with Russell, played by Joe Anderson, with him, we do see him just become slightly more irritable. Maybe we see him slightly, he's not going full homicidal, but he is becoming slightly more careless in his actions, and then, yeah, he is become more aggressive and more of a jerk. And maybe that's because he knows what's happening to him. I don't know. They could have explained, like you said, they could have taken a bit more care in how they're showing that, because say with the very first character, or maybe not the first character, with the second character, the one that burns his house down with his wife and kid inside, right? He doesn't know
That
what's
was
happening
scary
to him.
too.
That's
Mhm.
scary. Them trapped in their closet.
Oh yeah, when he's
Their
like,
dad.
"It's dad. He has a knife.
Oh,
That's scary.
terrifying. And he's like slowly trumping up the stairs. And it's a scare. And it's a very, it's a very real situation. They have no idea what's going on. And so that character, he doesn't know what's happening to him. And neither did the medical examiner, and neither did some of the other characters that were going through this. So maybe because he knows what's going on, he's trying to fight it. He's trying to think clearly, and and it's having a different effect. But the movie doesn't waste a lot of time on trying to explain that sort of thing. I think that, yeah, I don't know. It's a movie that gets, I think, a lot right, and it gets just enough wrong that it's not going to like stand out as like an incredible film or anything like that. Outside of, I don't know, outside of you just being a really big fan of one of these actors like Daniel Panabaker or something like that. I don't know if there's any big Joe Anderson fans out there, but he's in a lot of stuff too. I'm looking at his IMDb. He's in a lot of stuff.
I think for me, the most interesting one was the medical examiner with the pitchfork. I agree. Where he was, or maybe there were two different people. I can't remember, but
Yeah, I think the medical examiner was the guy with like the saw, and
yeah,
then the principal, I think, was the one who had the pitchfork.
yeah, the sewing of the mouth shut and then David finding it and cutting that stitch open and him saying behind you. I mean, again, those moments where they're trying to scare you with the crazies are really strong. And that is where this movie is really good. And I can see it kind of a thing where, in a different world, the version of this movie is the town is just continuing to go crazy and David and the deputy are trying to figure out what is happening. And they, go to various different houses and respond to various different calls or whatever. And like the tension builds, you can build the story from there or whatever. But
Yeah,
and then at the end, you can blame it on the government if you want to, as they find a blame whatever at the end rather than in the middle. But
I like the
Crazies was where this movie was the best.
yeah, and I like that towards the end they're hiding out at the truck stop where they were all supposed to be rescued from. And at the truck stop, you have the three hunters, the hunters who discovered the guy with the parachute, the pilot with the plane, right? And they've gone crazy. And so we do get a tiny piece of information, which is sort of uh, a reference to the 1973 film, is that this bio weapon is called Trixie. And I'm looking at some of the information from the director here. When it comes to the hunters, they are the crazies that we get to see who have at this point been infected for, I guess, the longest, and their physical features are really starting to um, deform. Their eyes are turned like bloodshot red, and their faces are kind of like eating out. The veins in their faces are starting to like really bulge out, and they look creepy. They look scary. I mean, I think that we could have, this movie's climax could have ended with a much more crazy heavy finale where you had a lot more characters who were in this more advanced stage of dealing with this virus. They talked about the makeup, and they said they were really trying to not make it too zombie. They really wanted it to look like something you could legitimately suffer from. So they looked at a lot of people who had suffered from rabies and tetanus and something called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, where these were very real diseases you could have. And they wanted to base it off that as opposed to like rotting flesh and jaws hanging open and things like that, which I think is a really cool and smart way to go with it. I don't know if this movie executes it to the level that I think they wanted to, but I think that they did a pretty good job with the character design, or with the creature design here, the makeup in the end.
Yeah, the look of the Crazies was really cool. They looked both zombie-like, but also angry. A lot of times, well, I was gonna say a lot of times you don't see angry zombies, but it depends on how you look at it. But these ones actually felt rabid, like you said, when they looked into how people respond to rabies and all that stuff. I felt like it was pretty apparent that they were just vicious and angry.
Okay.
David, have you seen the original at all?
I have not. I've not seen the original. I know that it's a George Romero film, and it's considered to be a Romero film that didn't really hit on the same way that a lot of his other, his bigger zombie films and some of his other horror films hit. People thought it was a little bit more, too much, what's the word, that it was, the subtext wasn't sub enough. And it was a little bit, and it was, so that it might have suffered from a lot of the same problems, but it doesn't help. I'm looking at the original here, and it's still got a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes. So most critics enjoy the original. And I think it was worth a second look for a remake. I think that, I haven't having not seen it, it's really hard to get up the courage to watch a movie from the '70s. Uh, but, I Andrew and others with that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I
Love Star Wars.
I watched to go off on a tangent on that because we haven't done a lot of like old classic horror movies, and I think that could be fun to look into.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
we do.
I watched the House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price the other day,
Mm.
and you know what? To be fair to that movie, as campy as it was, it had twists, it had some drama, it had a very interesting plot. I was very intrigued by it, and that was just the last 15, 30 minutes. So I do think that some of those old horror movies could be
Yeah.
fun, especially if you go into it with a mindset of like, how would I have felt of this in 1973? Like, would
Right.
it have been scary? It's silly now, but like, what would my horror be without this kind of horror? And that's where I like to look at it.
Well, if you guys will remember the last movie I did last year for So Many Scares, I think was The Fog from 1980.
Uh,
And
Yeah.
we're all kind of like, "Whoa, yeah, yeah." I think they made a remake of that too in 2005.
yeah.
I don't know. You talked about some funny stuff a minute ago, so I want to talk about something else. I was watching this movie and I thought to myself, I think we can all say we're kind of small townish kind of kids, right? I mean, we grew up outside of Tulsa for the most part, but I think what a town name, Ogden Marsh. That sounds exactly like a town name that we would have grown up around. I know that if I was a kid growing up in Ogden Marsh, I was the kind of neurotic kid that I would be like, why do we have to be Ogden Marsh? Why can't we be Ogden or Marsh? It's so stupid. Everywhere else gets one name. We had to have two. Kind of like neurotic 7-year-old I would have been complaining about the town name. But the idea of everybody in town being at a baseball. You know what I want to compare this movie to?
Say it.
The movie I'm going to compare it to is way better. I'm just gonna say this. This movie is to zombie films as A Quiet Place is to alien movies.
I knew you were going to say it quietly.
Yeah.
I knew it. I felt it in my bones.
Baseball fan, that's what it was.
Baseball. Well, and it's also kind of a similar small town aspect. They are
Small
not
town.
in a big city in those movies. And they actually, in A Quiet Place 2, spoiler alert, they run into someone that they know from the before times.
Right.
Like they know these people.
Right. And something else I was talking about. I was talking about with my wife. I was like, they never say aliens in A Quiet Place. And so like in this movie, they never say zombies.
I don't think they ever said zombies.
They never said it once. So I mean, like, I like that idea of like not.
Well, and you got to think, if this could happen, would we call them zombies? I don't know that we would. It feels
No, no.
too fake.
It
I do
also,
think we'd call them something different.
I do think though there were a lot of other people that wanted to treat the COVID virus like you were going to be a zombie if you got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, well, pandemic movies are different nowadays. You see them in a different lens, but you also see a lot of things where, like, yeah, you're right. Earlier, when you said that we haven't gone through quite the extent of being hoarded up and rounded through temperature scanners like that, but in some small ways, we have. Like, they still don't let me go into the dentist office without getting my forehead scanned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just like when we go to the pediatrician, got to scan the
Right.
forehead. And I am waiting
Do you
for
think that where now we're like, oh,
Yeah.
that was a good idea at the time in the movie?
Like that makes sense now. That makes sense
Makes
now.
sense
Like
now.
in 2010, I would have watched that and been like, why are we going through all that now? But yeah, it's there's that. I thought you guys were going to say that the comedy for you or the part where you had to laugh was the horror of the car wash, which was, I thought, a pretty funny kind of like, I was like, this would be kind of scary. But also just to me, I was like, they're in a car wash. Like we're having fun. But honestly, when Danielle Panabaker died, I legitimately went, "Oh," and then the car kept rolling out or whatever, and it immediately blew up, and I went, the car blew up." Yeah.
Well, the car's got to blow up.
And then the helicopter flew over, and I was like, "Oh, man, that is bad to worse."
No, I think
You guys have got rotten luck. That's what they've got.
my favorite unintentional comedic part, I think, was when the bone saw's chasing Timothy Olyphant's crotch down the floorway. It was still tense because that scene was great, but it's like they went a little too far into funniness when it's like
Yeah.
the saw going after his crotch.
Yeah, it was a very Indiana Jones-esque,
Yeah, yeah.
moment of, I don't know if you wanna call it levity or not, but yeah,
Right, right.
you gotta take
Uh,
that in.
yeah.
This is
Yeah.
definitely one that I would see, because again, I don't know what the recollection of this movie is for most people, but I also feel like this could be another fun one to remake. If you're going to remake a horror movie, I feel like you should remake some of the ones that are like super old that could be fun to modernize, or ones that didn't do well but have a good story attached to them. And this one has a really good story attached to it. And I know, not having seen the original one, but if both of them have kind of been, you know, not quite there, I think it would be a one to take a stab at.
Yeah,
Pardon.
the original one, for the most part, is very similar. It actually just begins with the man killing his wife and child at the farmhouse. That's just where it opens, and then it's more or less the same. It's about two guys, David and Clank, and their wife Judy, and one of their wives Judy, but they're firefighters instead of sheriff and deputy. And then the government gets involved. They're burning bodies, all that stuff. Yeah, there were. Yeah. Well, I ain't got much else to say about this other than I'm glad I picked it, I think, because I think it had a very good, vibe, and it wasn't overly scary, which is my favorite kind of so many scares movie.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. I think yeah. I'm glad that we watched it too. I don't feel like it. I don't know. It kind of just sits in the middle for me. It's neither amazing nor bad enough to not recommend to somebody. I think most zombie movie fans would enjoy it, at least for what it is. Not,
Which is why it's kind of forgotten.
yeah, that makes sense.
I got another reason why it's forgotten when it comes to the box office here in a second.
Made no money.
Yeah, probably not. Well, and it probably could have benefited from more of an A-list star, perhaps.
You mean you didn't recognize Timothy Oliphant from his starring role in The New Girl or The Girl Next Door?
No, not from that movie, they didn't. Well, and
That's
I kind of fear Oliphant and Daniel Panabaker are kind of cursed in a lot of ways, in my opinion, where like Timothy can't seem to get a movie off the ground. He does great on television.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He kills it there. But
yeah.
I think he's deserving of being a movie star, quite frankly.
I think he is too. The thing is, and I love Timothy Oliphant. I've tracked his career. All right, I've watched interviews. All right, I think I could say this. Man has poor movie choosing.
That's got to be it, huh?
He is really bad at it. He auditioned to play He auditioned to play Tony Stark, didn't get it. He picked this movie because he thought the title sounded good, and for whatever reason, he was in that movie. You remember I Am Number 4? You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
He picked that one for some silly reason too. I don't know what it is. Man has bad movie picking skills.
Why'd you pick The Girl Next Door? I actually liked him.
Oh, I think it was. I don't remember why.
It's just a broken clock being right once a day. Or
I
twice a day.
think he read the script and he was really intrigued by the character they wanted him to play, which is this like really sleazy, like he's a pimp or something, isn't he?
He's a porn
Like
producer.
a former producer guy. And from what I've read, when I remember, like people really loved that performance by him. They were like,
He did, honestly, he did a good job in that movie.
Yeah.
That's what I associate him with.
That's the thing is he's great in everything. All right.
Yeah.
He just picks movies that are like, they always end up being like, under promoted, or they're movies that were never going to probably be big. They're movies that are copycat movies, things like that. So I just feel bad. But you know what? If this man has he has found his way into the viewpoint of like a Jean Favreau, and he's starring in episodes of Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian and stuff. Tell you what,
It's true. He's got a lot of cred on television, but something about that TV to movie bridge, he just can't cross it because
and even when he's in a big movie, he always ends up so he sort of drifts towards the background. Like he's in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah.
He's in Amsterdam, but he's wearing like a lot of makeup from what I could tell. But I bet he's just kind of in the background.
I don't.
Anyway,
I was just gonna say I was looking at his TV filmography real quick, and Garrett's the only other person who's ever seen this show, but he was in The Grinder, and I don't remember him.
The Grinder. What a great show.
I think if I'm thinking of The Grinder as the show I'm thinking of, the actress who played his wife on Justified something was one of the main characters in The Grinder.
Grinders with
Rob Lowe and Fred Savage. And Rob Lowe is an actor who played a lawyer on TV, and so he is convinced that he could be a lawyer in real life.
And his brother is a lawyer in real
His
life.
brother is a lawyer in real life.
Never mind. The Grinder's a different show.
And Timothy Oliphant plays an actor who stars in a spinoff called The Grinder New Orleans.
Yep, I remember that. Yep, I agree. Yep, I remember that now.
Oh gosh.
He's in The Office as well. He was
Yeah.
Danny, I think, who's the good-looking guy who's like a salesman who they're all jealous of. Yeah, he has two roles. All right, he has conflicted lawman, right? And then he has like really good looking dumb guy who's like that's like everything else he does is like he's like a really good looking guy, but he's kind of like he's kind of like he has a tendency of being cast as sort of like a surfer kind of dude or like a chill like stoner dude in a lot of things as well. So like I don't know, he's always good in everything, but
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
I'm still
Well,
waiting for him to be. I'm still waiting for him to get that big movie.
we'll have to do a Talking Tim spinoff podcast someday.
Oh yeah, there you go.
We'll go through all of Timothy Oliphant's best
But
stuff.
everything he's ever done.
But that's the Crazies. I think we've talked it out. So
Yeah.
let's get into the box office and see how this movie was received initially. I know that the original had to become a cult classic over time.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility for this one?
I don't know
Let's
because
find out.
I think unfortunately for the Crazies, it doesn't live in a time period where
I don't know.
I mean, I think it could have if they had started playing it on TV like crazy that later that year or something like that, but I don't think they did. So the Crazies, and this is I think the other reason the Crazies didn't perform well, it opened up against another really big thriller movie that year. The Crazies would open the weekend of February 26th, 2010 against Shutter Island, which took the number one spot.
Whoa.
22.6 million. Shutter Island, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, was a
crazy
much more popular, much more sort of instantly iconic movie when it came out. The Shutter Island, also a movie that I don't feel like it ended up having the kind of legacy that I think they thought it would, but still very popular at the time. Oh, and actually, I'm just now realizing that Shutter Island was in its second weekend, so it was still number one. Went to like a week. The Crazies would finish number 3. And the number 2 spot was Cop Out, starring, I believe, Bruce Willis and
Tracy
Morgan.
Tracy
Recognize Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
And then him and
One
both
movie
hate each other
right
for
of
that movie.
Well, I don't know if that's true.
That brought in 18.2 million in its opening weekend. The Crazies, like I said, finished number 3 with $16 million.
Crazy.
Didn't really help also that still in its 11th weekend was Avatar, not The Last Airbender, the first blue alien.
The first blue alien.
Yeah. Brought in 13.6 in that weekend. So Avatar is still doing well.
11 weeks? That's a long time.
In 11 weeks.
In movie world.
It is. And at number 5 in its third weekend, you had Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief. So the Crazies would go on to finish with $39 million domestically, $15 million overseas for a $54 million worldwide. That $39 million was good enough to finish number 80 in the US box office. So it was a, slightly down year for the box office as a whole, but it was a pretty big year for movies that the three of us would remember fondly. Toy Story 3, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Inception, Despicable Me, Dragon, True Grit. Andrew loves that movie a lot. I like it.
True Grit's good. He likes the John Wayne one, though.
Oh, well, it's good classic. That was also a year of Iron Man 2, Alice in Wonderland, The Twilight Saga, Eclipse, Grown Ups, which is a pretty fun
Grown Ups. So many sequels.com.
I tell you what,
Great
tell you what, if I remember correctly, all right, fans, if you're listening, if I remember correctly, there's nothing funnier than the end of the So Many Sequels Grown Ups podcast when you immediately listen to the Grown Ups 2 podcast and the difference of opinion, the difference of tone, sentiment between the end of Grown Ups 1 and the beginning of Grown Ups 2. I can't state how funny it was to me listening.
You're right.
Such a tragedy.
It was.
More funny than it felt experiencing it.
Anyhow, so that's the year of 2010. That's the box office for the Crazies. It didn't do tremendously well, but I think it did make back its budget. It only had a budget of about $20 million. So with $55 million, they probably made back their money, but it wasn't quite good enough to potentially greenlit anything like a sequel, which the movie did not necessarily. It didn't not hint at a sequel, but it definitely left itself open that if they wanted to, they could have done, the Crazies Cedar Rapids or something like that. They could have, expanded the movie to another level if they'd wanted to, but I'm kind of glad they didn't.
Okay. All right. Well, let's look into what Letterboxd thinks about this movie. You can find all 3 of us on Letterboxd. You can find Andrew there too. You just won't find him here. You can find him on Letterboxd.
We made up.
So while we think about what our guess may be for what the Letterboxd community has rated it, a few lines from reviews here are, this is a good one, 4 stars. Good evening, friends. I am a whore for Timothy Oliphant and always have been. Thank you for your time.
I was late
David
when I
Rugg.
it was late when I wrote that one.
4 stars. I really like the characters in the Crazies. 3 stars. I will never drink unfiltered water again. 1 star. This movie is so freaking stupid, dude. That was intense.
That was
So there you go. There you go. A
I
variety of opinions.
I forgot I wanted to say this, that compared to World War Z, which is a movie we just recently did that was a zombie type movie, I do think this movie did a better job of endearing you to the characters than, say, something like that. So even though we didn't have like an A-lister like a Brad Pitt, I do think that by the middle point of this movie, I was really concerned for Judy, for David, for whoever it was. I wanted them to get out of this situation. Whereas in some movies like this, you just end up rooting for the zombies, because it's just like the characters just suck and you're just, bored with them.
You're right. Sometimes you want a specific character to get eaten by a zombie, and that's not really the case this time. So that is an interesting point. All right. What are we guessing? We've all had time to think now.
Garrett, you go first. I'm sorry.
2.7.
2.7. Okay.
I'm going to say, I'm going to feel very similarly, but I'm going to say even 3.
An even 3. Okay. Oh, you put me in a predicament by creating a gap the size of the Grand Canyon. Do I think it's less than 2.5 or 2.7 or more? I guess I'll uppercut David just a little bit and go 3.1 just as a catch-all, just in case.
Yeah, not a bad move.
Not a bad move. All right. The winner is, we have a direct hit.
What?
I love it when we get a direct hit. The winner this week is going to be David because Crazies has a perfect 3.0 on Letterboxd.
Kind of happy about that, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm really anticipating like a 2.8 or a 2.9, but I was hoping that it was going to be 3 or higher.
It's a perfect 3. Literally, the weighted average is 3.00 based on 38,000 ratings.
Awesome.
18 people have called this one of their top 4 movies of all time.
Well, that's cool too. Good for it.
Good for them.
Like,
I'd like to see what their others
this is one of those situations where this is a movie. When you find a movie that like didn't make like any sort of long-term impact, I think it is kind of nice when you find that it has like a little, I don't know, it has like a little, like there's some love for it somewhere.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you find a movie and you're like, we haven't heard of this. Let's dig it up. And then, you walk in and you go, oh, I like this. And you find out that everybody hated it immediately. Like, oh,
That is the worst. It does suck to like a movie and then come out and find out everyone else hated it. We've all been on that side of the fence before.
when it's a new movie, I feel less bad because then I'm like, okay, what was the newness? Okay.
Yeah.
But when it's like an old movie, when you like, dig up Dinner for Schmucks and you're like, I never heard about this. And you watch it and you're like, it's too bad. And you look at them and you go, oh, everyone hated this movie tremendously and it almost ruined Steve Carell's career. Okay. Fascinating. I need to reanalyze myself.
Yeah.
That is not a specific example. I'm just
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah, that didn't feel targeted at all. Well, I'll go ahead and kick off our ratings and say I agree spot on with Letterboxd. I think it's a 3.0.
That 2.7 is where I sit on it, but I'm a fan because it's like right in the middle for me. Good movie, but I like to round up. So it will be at a 3 for me too.
Yeah, now I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I'm just gonna give it a little bit extra boost there. I'm just gonna give it the Oliphant boost and give it a 3.5. And I liked it enough. I would watch it again. I would even say that I would watch it a second time if I had to.
Oh, too.
No,
Yeah, maybe not immediately.
No. But if somebody turned it on, I wouldn't be like,
But like next Halloween, sure, maybe. I'll
yeah,
watch
but
it.
if someone said, "Hey, I've never watched this," I go, "Oh yeah, well, let's watch it real quick." Why not?
Okay, well, that's going to make our average pretty dang close to that 3.0, so I'm not even going to calculate that. We have one more week of so many scares left to go. It is bittersweet because I always loved the horror movies, our horror movie month, because we really don't ever touch on them at any other time in the year. I don't think we have. If we did, it'd be rare. So it's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. Plus, it gets me in the holiday season.
Well,
So we got one more left. It's my pick.
coming.
Yeah, so many Santas are coming next. Well, not next, but soon. Next week, we're going to do my pick. I'll go ahead and tell y'all it's gonna be Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat is a horror anthology movie. It's got some dark comedy elements to it. It's got some campiness to it. It's, if I remember right, it's a series of 4 stories or short films that are interwoven with a common theme and a common character. So, Trick or Treat is how we will end So Many Scares 2022.
Nice. Cool. That's exciting.
I'm
Very
able
It
to
excited.
was a fun time, boys.
Yep. All right. Well, find us online on all your favorite social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Letterboxd, and we keep up with posting on most of those. Particularly Instagram and TikTok is probably better. So go find us there, and you can, of course, subscribe to the show and check out all of our past episodes at SoManySequels.com. We've got all of them there. You can even search for a movie and see if we've done it before. And you can go to patreon.com/so-many-sequels and help support the show there. Throw a little green our way if you have some to spare. We've got a $1 tier and a $5 tier, and that will get you into our Discord where you can talk with us and some other listeners of the show and friends of ours about movies and sharing memes and stories and all kinds of fun stuff. So we have fun over there. So patreon.com/so-many-sequels. We'll see you next week. Happy Halloween.